Hey everyone, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-jitsu. I hope you're doing well. What I wanted to discuss today had to do with an update on the diet video that I did last year. I think it was last summer or so. That video was when I was just kind of getting into my own research on diet because of my blood work, which was so bad. For somebody like me, I would have never expected I would have had an A1C of 6, which is pre-diabetic. As I've done more research and I'm starting to come to conclusions, and I study a lot of people and try to find out what works well for me. And like with you, you're gonna have to kind of play with it as well and see what works for you. But what I've come to some conclusions is this. Number one, just some basic overviews. Number one, fasting is a good practice to get into. It sucks. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, and it gets to be part of your life. For example, I do intermittent fasting. And I started fasting because I was kind of watching up on videos by Dr. Jason Fung, who's out of University of Toronto, and he's a kidney doctor. And he was figuring out that a lot of his patients were dying because of renal failure, which is kidney failure. And a lot of them were type 2 diabetic. So his thinking was, instead of try to address the type 2 diabetes, which would then help maybe alleviate some of the deaths he had in the kidney department, which is his specialty, how about go back a step further and see how we can prevent people from getting type 2 diabetes, which then led him to fasting. Intermittent fasting really means just eating for a smaller window of time in any given day. So as an example, I don't usually eat anything until 12 noon or later. And I don't feel bad at all for eating really late. And in fact, there are some top athletes like Ronda Rousey and George St. Pierre who are known to be eating one meal a day, meaning they're fasting for maybe 23 hours and eating just in a 1 hour window, just one meal, but probably a gigantic meal that they can take all their daily calories in. And by fasting the rest of the day, it allows the body to recoup, to burn glucose, and to get to a point where they're burning fats. So you can fast intermittently, and intermittent fasting typically means you're fasting within a day, not more than 24 hours. Now you can go into multi-day fasting, which I do every month. I might do a 2 or 3 day fast, where my last meal will be Sunday dinner, and I won't eat until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. And what that does is it allows your immune system to kind of catch up with all the damage that's been happening through environmental factors, through eating like crap, or maybe your body needs to repair some system, whether it be your muscles, your joints, whatever. So going on a 2, 3, or longer day fast will allow your body to kind of rejuvenate itself. And people talk about doing cleanses, right? And they change your diet so they can do a cleanse, so they cleanse themselves out. There's no better way to cleanse your body than the fast. Don't eat. Your body will purge everything from you, right? After a day and a half or so, you don't even go take a dump. You drink a lot of water, you're gonna flush out a lot of liquid, so you gotta take in some salt. But your body is now thinking to itself, okay, I'm not gonna get food for a while, so let me get some of this cleanup work that I've been meaning to do, but I've been putting on the back burner. Because when you eat, you tax your body. It takes about 2/3 of your blood supply to process everything that's engaging while you're eating, and digesting. So what you can also do is put that as part of your life, and you're trying to get rid of all the glucose in your bloodstream. And there's no better way than going to fast. I mean, you can do it slowly over time by cutting back your carbs and all that over the course of weeks. And eventually you will get into ketosis, but it's a lot quicker if you just simply fast. Now, another thing that I've been kind of thinking about are defense mechanisms of what I eat. People think to themselves that plants are, they want to be eaten. In reality, they don't. And they have chemical systems to defend themselves. So they may not be able to physically defend themselves, right? A plant that'll get you that way. But what they'll do is they'll put a chemical within their systems, especially in their seeds, to hurt you if you decide to eat them, right? So beans are a good example. Beans are what we call lectins, and lectins are poisonous to the human body. And in fact, beans, if you don't cook them really well, you can die eating them, right? You do not want to eat beans raw. certain kind of beans, especially beans like kidney beans and stuff. You don't want to eat them raw because they'll kill you. And even then, if you don't cook them well enough, you don't want to eat it. Now, if it's harmful to you in a raw state, why would you want to put it into your body at all? If you really think about it, the plant is trying to defend itself against an organism trying to eat it. But in our whole cultivation of grains and all that, we tend to eat stuff that maybe we shouldn't be eating. Maybe we're not meant to eat them, but they can serve a purpose, right? If you have no other way to get nourishment, then eating some grains and all that will get you by. But is it something that you want to eat over long term? Probably not. Another way that we consume these beans as seeds or whatever is through oils. And I've been kind of learning, now granted, nothing that I'm saying here is the be all end all. You need to do your own research on this. But let me just kind of point you in some directions. Seed oils generally are not good as well. These are your hydrogenated oils, your unsaturated oils, and you generally want to eat for a source of fat. You want to eat saturated fats, butter, lard, which is pig oil, which is, if you cook bacon, what's left in there is going to be bacon fat, which then solidifies into lard. Tallow, which is beef fat, so you cook a big fatty steak and the oil that's left in your pan, it solidifies, that is tallow. Those kinds of oils are the kinds of oils you want to eat. They don't go rancid like the way a seed oil will. They don't get as damaged when you cook with them. And they're also good for you. Your body will use them very nicely. Seed oils often were put together by chemical industries to use as lubricants, and they to expand the use of them, they figured out how to get us to eat them. Crisco is one. Crisco is a vegetable oil, and funny, a lot of them aren't even from vegetables; they're from seeds, and they've hydrogenated it to solidify it to make it look like lard to get you to cook with them. So, if you can, or if I can, whenever I can, I don't even buy any corn oil. I don't buy safflower oil. I haven't bought olive oil in a while. Anywhere that I would need an oil, I use butter, or I'll use bacon fat or tallow. Plants with their lectins, here's what they can do. There's a mucus lining in our internal, so like in our intestines and all that, and that's meant to be a block. And I guess and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the mucosal lining is made of sugars, and the lectins bind to the sugars. And by binding to the sugars, they get into that one single layer of bacteria that is blocking the entrance into your internal system. And believe it or not, your digestive tract is actually external tissue. It's not internal tissue. There's a barrier that things need to go through to get to your internal. And once they cross that barrier, that's a condition that we call leaky gut. And leaky gut is the cause of inflammation in our body. And inflammation over the long term becomes damage. And damage becomes, like an injury or something like that. And your body, maybe can't fix it. Now, with regard to animals, their defense mechanism really are what? Teeth and claws. Or with fish, maybe it's scales. And once you get past that, you get to the flesh. And for the most part, provided it's been raised in a natural environment, you can eat it raw, right? And you're perfectly safe to eat it raw. Even like with eggs, people say you can't eat eggs raw. And I think for the most part, you can't. But if you get them truly farm raised, you can eat them raw. And you're not gonna get salmonella poisoning. But as with everything I'm saying, go and check it out for yourself first. I'm not a doctor, I'm not an authority. I do look for doctors to get some information on. So on the plant stuff, the lectins, I'll just refer you over to Stephen Gundry, who's a medical doctor, cardiologist, very famous doctor out of Loma Linda Hospital, who has since made this effort his crusade. He's left practicing surgery and is now trying to get people to look more into their diet. Suffice to say, anything that spent time in a factory that had to get processed as in like with grains, how they have to process to create flour, probably don't want to do that. But if it's an animal that got butchered up, then yeah, I mean, that's kind of good. If it's a fish that was fished and, you know, you get it fresh in your market, yeah, that's stuff you want to eat. But yeah, if it's processed, if it's packaged, like in Oreo cookies, I love Oreos. No, don't eat that. Bread, no, don't eat that at all either. Bread's bad too. Now, what kind of diets are we looking at? You know, there are high carb diets, and here for you know, the Gracie diet, historically, that's a high carb diet, and they've thrived on it. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, but, you know, generally with the high sugars and stuff, that kind of creates the insulin secretion, which is a hormone, which stores fat. Now, none of them are fat. Now, probably because they don't overeat. And they do fast every once in a while. And they only eat fresh foods. So some people can process fresh fruit a lot better than somebody else because of the sugar content. And people say, you know, it's sugar, it's sugar, it's sugar. Well, I think yes and no. If it's processed sugar, it's probably worse for you than the sugar you get out of an apple. Or if you squeeze an apple and get apple juice. If you're gonna go high carb, I would say keep it as natural as possible. Now, vegetarian. I know a lot of fat vegetarians, right? Why? Probably because they eat a lot of bread, they eat a lot of sugar because it's not meat. And their thing is, well, you know, I don't wanna kill an animal. I get it, but if you have to kill out an entire pasture to grow wheat or grow corn, how many animals did you kill then? Because they no longer have that as their feeding ground. If you think of these miles and miles and acres of fields that are there just for crops, animals can't live there anymore, right? Animals typically graze, you know, so you can kind of look at a couple of ways, you know, what's more cruel to animals? Or when they're harvesting crops, think of the animals that may be within the crops, just kind of making that area as their home. How many of them get killed in the machinery? A lot. Well, I'm not going to go there anymore, but that's, you know, just something to think about. I mean, if you're a vegetarian because of the animal rights, that's one thing. But if you're a vegetarian because you believe it's good for you, probably not. Paleo. So paleo diets, what they're trying to do is they're trying to basically cut down a lot of the carbs, but it's not necessarily a low carb meal. I think it's more of a balanced type of thing. If I remember, I kind of like the zone diet, which, you know, you had an equal part of carbs, an equal part of protein, and then some fats. But it tends to be lower fat, you know, but higher in protein. I've tried that, and I've actually done pretty well on that. But you know, like with any good sensible diet, a paleo diet strives to stay with more natural stuff and away from the processed things. So that's a good thing about it. The keto diet, which is largely a high fat diet, I think 70-80% fat, maybe 10 or 15% protein, only 5% carbs, you know, very little carbs. You're striving for zero carbs. A lot of our members have had great success with the keto diet in losing weight. And, you know, John, one of my students had done a video on it, how he went from about 305 pounds down to about 175 pounds just by going keto, right? Eating a lot of fat, you know, choosing high fat cuts of meat and eating a lot of butter, a lot of oil from lard and tallow, and making that the majority of his diet. And it's weird, but eating fat doesn't make you as fat as eating sugars will make you fat. I've been starting to, because of people like John and other members in my studio who have done the same thing and have had great success, I've been eating a lot more fat. You know, I generally eat a lot of ribeyes. You know, I'll go to Costco, I'll buy 1 or 2 of those trays, you know, I'd have 4 of them in there, 4 pounds worth, and I'll eat at least 1 a day. And, you know, I buy the fattiest ribeye I can find. The amount of fat is something you need. And when I was, up until very recent, I would always cut the fat out. I'd set it aside, I'd toss it, I wouldn't eat it. Now I eat the fat too. And the last one is a carnivore diet, which is, oh, by the way, the keto, you want to study keto, and also carnivore diet, you want to study Ken Berry, MD. And then also for the carnivore diet, it was all kind of started up, you know, this whole awareness that was started up by Dr. Sean Baker. And I think he spent a lot of time on his Instagram page kind of just defining it, but he ended up on Joe Rogan's show, and I think he blew up after that. And this guy only eats meat. He does intermittent feasting, as he calls it, where he might eat 3 pounds of meat in a sitting and then don't eat for another couple of days because he's satiated, doesn't. And that's kind of the way maybe a lot of our ancestors were eating, how they would just gorge on food. They go on a hunt and they have to eat that food. You know, a lot of times they eat it raw, sometimes they might cook it, who knows. They had all that food, they had no way to keep it, so they had to all eat it. So they just eat it over the next 24 hours or so, just eat it, and then they get to a point where they can't eat anymore. The food's all gone, and they would be good for a couple of days and then realize, okay, I gotta go hunt, I gotta go eat. Kind of like how lions are, right? Lions, they eat, and after they eat, they just sleep. And then when it's time to eat, they'll go and hunt again. That's a carnivore diet. So the carnivore diet basically is just you're gonna eat meat and you're not gonna eat any carbs, no vegetables, no fruit. And on the one hand, based on all the brainwashing that we've had over the course of our past decades, you think to yourself, you gotta eat vegetables and stuff. But I think maybe you don't. And these people, they might have high cholesterol, but they don't have any blockage in their arteries. And that was the same thing with me too. I took one of those tests where they do a scan of your arteries, and mine was 100% clear. So the high cholesterol numbers that may read through me don't really have an issue. And if you kind of look into Dr. Stephen Gundry's work, he'll talk about high cholesterol is not necessarily indicative of heart disease. Heart disease, there are other factors in it, but high cholesterol is not necessarily one of those things. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to go through. And I've been kind of a keto carnivore type diet of late, maybe the last 3 to 6 months. But I do eat other things here and there. I do have cheat days. Now, it's funny because now that I have a cheat day, after a cheat day, I feel like crap. Truth be told, I don't feel good having a cheat day. So what happens is my cheat day has probably been less and less over time. And you may find that as well. It's just not even worth cheating. But I found that I felt best eating a lot of meat and a lot of fat, a lot of high fat meat. So I don't buy lean cuts at all. I don't buy sirloin. I don't buy USDA Select. I only buy USDA Choice or Prime. And I don't eat very many vegetables either, but I will eat them once in a while. I don't refuse them. I just don't make them. I grew up eating rice. I hardly eat rice now, and I might just take a bite here and there, and it's been working for me. And what you find out is you really don't miss the sugar after you get used to not being on it. Well, that's the kind of success I've been having. But I hope the references that I gave you will help to spur your looking at it on your own and seeing what works for you as well. But play with it, and everybody's a little bit different. Some people will do better on a keto, some people do better on a carnivore, and some people do better on a paleo. But try those out. But just remember, just eat fresh, eat organic, and like with beef, try to go as much grass-fed, grass-finished as you can. It's a lot harder to find sometimes, but try it where you can. And eat a lot of fat, eat very little sugar. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Thank you for liking, thank you for sharing, thank you for subscribing. And if there's anything, go ahead and comment below, and let's get a dialogue started here on this part. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Talk to you later. Happy training. Bye-bye now.